Shalom, welcome to Eretz Israel. I'm Avraham Shira. We are a few hours from Shabbat and Parshat Miketz, this life-changing parsha, really, for the history of Am Yisrael, for the history of the Egyptian people as well. And it has to do with prophetic dreams, how they're interpreted, how we learn from these dreams, all kinds of other lessons. And of course, the Zohar deals with these issues straight up, gives us a lot of information. And, it's the type of parsha that you can just learn and keep learning, because you'll always find something new. Now, we know that Pharaoh had this dream, and he saw these skinny cows, and they were up beside the Nile River, and then out comes 7 fat cows, and they swallow up the skinny cows. And he was disturbed, and he woke up, and then he saw a staff of wheat with thick, healthy buds of wheat, and then, of course, an unhealthy staff of wheat, again, 7 buds of wheat, came up and swallowed up the other wheat. Pharaoh didn't know what to do, and he went to all the wise men of Egypt, and whether or not you hold by the wise men of Egypt, these people knew things. These people practiced the occult. These people knew how to speak to demons. These people knew how to conjure spirits. They weren't, silly folks in, reading palms in a little shop down in downtown Manhattan. These were people who worked for the king, and they had a certain ability, a certain expertise. And as Jews, and especially a person who likes the supernatural and is attracted to those types of things, we have to immediately draw distinctions. Well, what's the difference between a Jewish prophecy and a Jewish interpretation and a non-Jewish one, or one that's been being used or made by the Hartumim, they're called in Egypt, and Rashi tells us they were those who consulted the dead, which is a problem for a lot of reasons. We're not going to go into it now, but the dead don't like being bothered. They're just like everybody else. They have their place and we have our place, and they don't really look forward to traveling down into this realm to give over information. And so one of the things that Jews don't do is we don't consult the dead. We don't consult dead spirits. We speak straight to the Creator, because He has all the power anyways. And of course, what are we after when it comes to prophetic dreams and interpretation? Well, we're just after information. We want information to make life better, to improve things, and to help others, and hopefully ourselves and our families, communities, etc. So it's all about the information, and certainly nowadays everybody is kind of information sensitive, and the value of information has gone way up, and I think that people recognize that their information is very important to other people who want to mine it and sell it. So, information is an interesting subject unto itself. However, what do we learn? The Parsha in the Zohar tells us, why did God send a prophetic vision to the king of Egypt, one of the biggest evil sorcerers of the day? Now, the Midrashim tell us some of the things that Pharaoh used to do. And it's kind of hard for me to repeat, because it's not very pleasant to hear about people that bathe in blood and use other bodily fluids to cast spells and to curse people and to draw forces of power to him. Because we don't understand really how the physical interfaces with the supernatural. But there are rules for that interface. And I don't want to go into it too much, because it's diversional. Really, it will take your mind somewhere else. And if you so much want to know how to work with demons and angels and etc., you have to go down to the New Age bookstore or learn a lot of Zohar. But I prefer the Zohar method, and that takes a long time and a lot of learning. But the point is that the Zohar wants to know why God would send such a prophetic, holy vision to a very unholy, evil person, a person who would, himself or his family, certainly they would throw babies in the river, and they would sacrifice to all kinds of gods. And it's an absurdity when you look at it today. However, the Zohar answers. It's not because Pharaoh was good or had this spark of good, or no, it's because Pharaoh was a king. And God sends dreams to kings, even if they're evil people. True dreams to evil people, because they have this power over so many other lives that God looks at the big picture always. He doesn't lose sight of the big picture, ever. But he also can see the little picture that Pharaoh is who he is, and he is going to have a dream, a series of dreams that he's not going to be able to interpret with all his wise men and all his astrologers and all his necromancers. They're not going to be able to interpret Joseph's dream. When Joseph comes along and they take him out of the pit and they shave him and they put a nice garment on him, and they present him to the king. This is a big, big moment in history. That someone who was down so low went up so high to become the viceroy of a nation. It's pretty absurd. Can you imagine if you saw a headline today that said they took someone off death row at Rikers Island and they made him mayor of New York or governor of you understand what I mean. So the pivotal moment in history is critical to understanding why these dreams happen and why they're delivered through evil messengers, or because we understand in the Kabbalah there's 7 branches to the lower portion of the tree of life that exude holiness into our souls and into everything, into the entire world. But for all the 7 holy branches of the tree of life, we call them the lower 7, they give life force to everything that's good. There is a shadow tree, the dark side, we call it, the other side. And it has 7 dark rivers as well. And so a person who's a sorcerer or a necromancer, he can have real power, but he's getting his information from a bad place. And so it's not going to be selfless. It's going to be selfish eventually. And it's also going to have intoned powers that are going to come back to be paid. When you make an angel do something, and you can, it's written in the books of creation that God made angels subservient to man. But if the man is not on the level, the angel will exact payment in very devastating ways. So Pharaoh was this figure who had the dream, but it wasn't for his own sake. It was for the sake of a much bigger picture. And that, of course, is the sake of bringing Joseph to the level that he could bring his father and their 70 souls down to Egypt in order that they could create the Jewish people in the midst of the Egyptian people over the 210 years that count as the actual enslavement in Egypt. So you see, a nation had to be born in slavery. And the family came that became the nation, and the whole thing had to happen through the elevation of Joseph. And of course, in the Kabbalah, Yosef represents the river of life that begins in the head and goes through the mind, through the mouth, through the heart, and through all the lower organs. This river of life is a holy thing. It's giving all of us life, including the non-holy people. However, there is a river of darkness, and the river of darkness is the Nile. Now, why should the Nile be a river of darkness? The Nile gives food for people for thousands of years. No, it's not the Nile's fault, folks. The Nile, and in the books of reincarnation, every river has an angel, every mountain has an angel, even every tree and blade of grass, because we don't understand what an angel means. It means a channel of life force that keeps it wanting to live, right? Wanting to be. And planets are the same, and constellations, they all have powers that keep them in place. But in Kabbalah language, it's angel. But in modern day language, we call it gravitational fields. We call them Van Allen belts. We call them all, the electromagnetic radiation that surrounds a tree or a bush or a flower or an animal. All those things are still approximations of energy in words. Okay, so let's not get confused between words, whether they're 21st century scientists or 2,000 years before this Pharaoh was even born. Okay, the one we're talking about, before Joseph, etc. So we have to really be careful about our terms, because that's part of the transformation of our mind is through the language we use. So when we go back to learn the ancient books, we're getting an ancient take on very real and modern concepts today. It's just the science has helped us to understand it even more. But nonetheless, So the river, the Nile River, it's just a river, right? It has an angel over it that keeps it doing what it does. It flows north, which is strange, but nonetheless, the point is that once people worship something physical, they change it. They change its status. That's why in the Torah, if you have a little dried, I have a little etrog from Sukkot, right? It smells nice when I need a nice smell. And this little fruit, it's just a fruit. Now, if a person bows down to it and thinks and gives it power and calls it God, then they're ruining the fruit. They're putting the wrong energy on the thing. And that's what idol worship essentially is. We're misappropriating power. Our power, God's power in us, to something else. And that's what idol worship is, and it's still going on today in various forms. Because you can worship anything. You can worship money, you can worship science, you can worship medicine, doctors, anything. Politics, that's where man makes himself into an idol. It's all forbidden in the Torah, but the idea is important to us. It's where we give our power. It's not the idol's fault. It's not the Nile's fault. It's not the tree. Rabbi Akiva says that every tree peoples in Eretz Israel, people used to serve as an idol because they saw the spiritual light on the thing. They thought that was God, but it wasn't God. It was a reflection of the energy in the creation itself that was assigned to that thing. So they were worshiping the multitude of forces of creation and not the original. Now, back to our main point though. So this is all important for understanding, interpreting prophetic dreams, because a dream will go according to the dreamer's mindset, to his language, to his economy, to his society, to his education. Everybody's prophetic moment is shaped by his own character or personality. So no two dreams are the same. And no two prophets are the same. And so what the Zohar tells us is every dream is according to the dreamer and every interpretation is according to the interpreter, because the interpreter has power. Now, what's the interpreter doing? He's taking a list of symbols or an image of symbols, and he's telling you what they mean. So Yosef heard Pharaoh's dream and he said, Elohim, God will interpret Pharaoh's dream. And, there's an interesting switch there. It goes from Joseph talking to God, Joseph speaking in the name of God. And that takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of purification. Of course, Joseph had 12 years in a pit, in an Egyptian prison to get purified. So I'm sure that helped. It wasn't pretty. But however, he understood that these cows represented 7 bad years. These cows, fat cows, right? Healthy looking cows, they represent good years. So you see the interpretation takes place in time, in quantity of time, and in the quality of life force. Because when there is 7 years of famine, that's considered that the entire tree of life is shrinking. In other words, there was a famine all over the entire planet at the time of this story. And that means that the 7 channels of the tree of life that we talked about were shrunken. They were small, and they were giving over a lot of life force. And that's why there was a famine all over the world, and everybody had to come to Joseph to buy food. But that was all part of God's plan to transform this little family called Jacob and his sons into the beginnings of a great nation. Okay. With all of that said, we understand now that dreams have a context. And so all of us dream. And the rabbis say a beautiful thing. They say a dream, when you first wake up in the morning, is called a nevuah katana. It's called a little prophecy. That dream you have right before you wake up. Now, why is that? Well, you don't have to believe me. There was just an article published by the Harvard School of Sleep Research, and they identified that there's this moment, 1 minute or so, when you first wake up. It's that moment between the deep sleep, which is usually theta. It can be, also another level, omega, but really it's that level between death and life, between sleep and wakefulness. And right when you wake up, at that moment of consciousness, this study in Harvard said that people have greater creativity and greater memory and greater learning ability. Now, all of those are extensions of the prophetic moment, because all it is really is a download of your higher soul comes to you at that very moment. Now, why is that? Why then at that bridge between sleep and wakefulness? Well, because your higher soul is coming into you when you wake up in the morning, right? That's why we wash our hands in the morning, because my higher soul has been up in heaven, reading the newspaper, and now it comes back down into my brain, and it brings with it traces of a higher realm, higher information, higher understanding, higher vision, higher language. All of that is brought back into us at the moment that we wake up. And so if you wash your hands and you're aware and you start to pray or meditate or just think deeply a little bit, you're going to see that those are the most powerful moments of your day. And including if you have a dream, when you wake up at that time, that means the dream was sent to you to give you a piece of information. And it's happened so many times, Baruch Hashem, in my life that, I don't like to talk about, my own experience too much, but I use it once in a while as an illustration. Recently I had a dream that someone handed me a baby through a car window. And recently, without getting into too many details, somebody moved onto our land with a baby and said to me, you're going to be like the father of this baby. And I don't want to get into the details, like I said, but, the dream happened. I had a dream of seeing two little orange seeds go through a pipe. And right afterwards, two of my daughters told me they were pregnant and they had baby boys. So those little dreams, it's just God teaching us through our higher soul information that's meant to give us faith, to believe in what we're doing, to believe in the mitzvot, to believe in the Creator and His Torah and His history, and to believe in the Jewish people and their vision and mission, and to believe in the non-Jews that they have a vision and a mission too, because we're all in this boat together. So, the moment before you wake up is really a precious time, and I bless all of you to catch that time, record that time, and treat it as a holy moment, because it is. Okay, and that moment the dreams come through, it can help your decision-making process. If you go to bed with problems on your head, and then oftentimes you could wake up with the solution. But we have to pay attention. And that seems to be that's part of the problem of social media, just paying attention, right? Well, here we are on social media, and it's also a blessing from Hashem that we can talk here, Erev Shabbat, from Eretz Yisrael around the world, and we can share the spirit of Shabbat. It's coming in here. It's already come in 8 hours earlier in Australia. It'll come in 8 hours later in Nebraska, and so on and so forth. But it's all this revolving canister of time that we move through time. And Shabbat is a time where we get the extra soul that we lost at Mount Sinai. They were all taken away from us at the sin of the golden calf. And you could say, well, I wasn't at the golden calf. I didn't serve that. No, but the root soul was. And even the people, only 3,000 people actually served the calf. But because we didn't fight back, we're implicated in the actual story. So this is something that we get back this afternoon, this evening. And that moment when we say Baruch Hu on the evening prayer of Shabbat, there's a download that comes back to us and gives us another bit of this information, this inspiration, this vision of life and ourselves in it that helps heal everything that we have to go through during the week. So you should all be blessed with some healing, with some high prayers for others. When you don't know what to pray, it just means that God wants me to pray for somebody else. And so let's join together in this. We're in a very important period in human history. I think I don't want to say it was exactly like Yosef and interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, but right now the Jewish people are Yosef, and right now the large world is starting to act more and more like Pharaoh. So let's see who wins over the long haul. But we have faith in our God. We have faith in ourselves. We have faith in our teachers, and that goes back a long way. So God bless you all. Have a great Shabbat. Do that little moment, catch that moment when you first wake up, and you will find wonders and miracles there for you. We'll be on all the platforms this week, and look forward to seeing you there. God bless. Shabbat Shalom.